The reason this podcast exists is because I have a tendency of finding articles, information that I find super cool and interesting, and immediately nag my husband, bug him about it because I want him to share my level of enthusiasm. And so this Saturday, I came across this really interesting article in the New York Times by Dr. Anne-Laure Le Cunff, who's a neuroscientist, and she shares her findings about how AI is potentially dulling our curiosity. Of course, I had to share this with Dave. I march off to find him. The poor man's in the bathroom, and then we immediately have this yelling back and forth. I don't know. Does he want to share experience of that?
So, I'm Dave. This is Rupali. This is, well, actually, it's our podcast or our vlog, where we talk about items that are open in our head or open in our browser tabs. And we have a discussion about our thoughts until we kind of come to some type of consensus on what we both understand and appreciate about the topic.
We're married, if you haven't figured it out. We're also co-founders of an applied behavioral science consultancy called BCX Design, where our aim is to help businesses fix their broken plans and broken products.
So usually what we do, we are asked to look at business plans or products that did not survive contact with humans the way that they thought that they would. And we fix it using behavioral science.
So enough about BCX Design and about what we do as adults, and more moving on to the fun topic that we would like to cover today. It actually started what got my notice, and I'm just going to quickly read this interesting statistic. 60% of Google searches in the United States now end without the user clicking on a link. And this is attributed to how we now search and how those responses now pop up for us. If you're someone who actively uses search on Google and haven't realized it, there is an AI mode now that's available. You now get your responses summarized. Gone are the days where you actually had to look through the top 5 links, ignoring the sponsored result. You now have your answer right there for you. And so the article appropriately titled, "We're Losing the Ability to Discover What We Did Not Know How to Ask." And it got me thinking, how am I searching? How am I satisfied with responses? What's happened to my innate sense of curiosity, which frankly has a tendency of annoying our friends and my husband? And so my journey was, okay, I need to find this article. I got snippets of it posted from Instagram. The portion that was free, the rest of it was behind a paywall. And so I went beyond that to go searching for other articles that might have covered the same area of research, which I did find, did read, and I shared it with Dave. Now, he and I tend to have very different ways of searching to satisfy that curiosity, that itch. And so I'll let him share his journey.
So she's at the bathroom door and she says something that, let's say, piques my curiosity. There's a term that I use from time to time called worldview disruption. Basically, she broke a pattern. She said to me, AI might be impacting our curiosity. And I thought, wait a minute. AI, for me, has made me, if nothing more curious than I've ever been before. How can this be? And what I went for was, rather than the New York Times article itself, which was already behind a paywall, I went for the article or the paper that she wrote or referenced in that conversation. And I dug into that. And from there, I read a few other, let's call them psychological and behavioral economics journals. And what I found was, let's just say, some explanations for why it might be affecting our curiosity. And what I learned ended up having me share an offhanded post on Sunday. It was just a statistic that apparently when we use AI in conversations where we have intent to buy something, the AI will pick up on that. And because it knows a bit about us in whatever context we've provided to it, apparently 74% of us trust it enough when it comes to purchasing a product to just look at the first product that it recommends. And so this led me down an interesting series of rabbit holes. if most of us are going to do this, what might this mean for us? How might this change how we think and make decisions?
So before we actually comment and discuss about what this means for the larger universe, I personally thought it was interesting because, one, we've been hearing a lot about the dulling of our cognitive abilities, but it's mostly been around critical thinking. We've had our friends and our peers who complain about what they're seeing happening within their teams and in their companies. We ourselves have seen it happen to ourselves, and it's been a journey to sort of pull ourselves away from that dependence and identify where we as humans excel at and where we need AI to support and augment. But this was interesting because it spoke about curiosity, and I've always considered myself a curious cat. In fact, that was one of the nicknames I had growing up as a child because I have this intense desire to know about many things. Maybe this is just one of the aspects or facets about myself. And I remember complaining about AI mode on Google when I started to notice that search for responses, I was getting this instant response, this instant answer. And this was about maybe 6, 7 months ago. I remember complaining about it. But of late, I found that if I don't get my instant response, my instant gratification, I'm actually kind of annoyed. I really look forward to getting, if I put in a query, I want my answer now. I don't want to have to search through 3, 4 links. But if I think about it a bit deeper, I think I value that experience when the answer for me doesn't hold a high value, or I know that I can easily verify or fact check it or cross reference it. I still find that my behavior to actually search for answers, if I'm looking for something more academic, more research focused, something that I'm not truly satisfied with as a response from Google, from the AI mode, or from any of the like GPT or Gemini or Claude, then I do the old-fashioned way, going down A to Z, or A to Z is not A to Z. It is A, B, C, D, and everything along the way. But I don't know, how's it for you? Have you found it changing things for you?
I think, like a lot of people, I've worried that in many ways AI was changing me, perhaps making me a little bit stupider in a few interesting ways. And so I've tried to change how and when I use it, both so that I can get, let's just say, better results for what I want, and also so as to ensure that I can still think for myself. So in that way, I'm mindful about my usage of it, and I don't want to become dependent on it.
The article does talk about what companies need to think about, how to harness the power of curiosity, what would it mean for training programs, philosophical thinking, etc. But I also had to take a step back and think, is it really a bad thing to get this kind of an interaction, this kind of an experience where we search for answers to questions and we get a quick shortcut result as opposed to putting in the effort to finding those answers, especially when we're time starved, like we're busy. Do we have the time to give 15 minutes, or do I want them 30 seconds? So is it really a bad thing, at some level, to give up this curiosity for the answer? Or is it more contextual at a user behavior level where, what might result in us having this trade-off where I trade off time versus curiosity?
I mean, this actually is what got me into this thing in the first place. So I started looking at this through the lens of commerce, shopping. I think I've always probably enjoyed the experience of shopping. Not all the time, of course, but like
You don't like shopping.
I do. I just don't like shopping for clothes, but I do like shopping for lots of things. And what I was thinking about when I initially started reading these reports was there is kind of a joy. There are unexpected discoveries that happen by the process of evaluating different things. It can be something simple. We discover new ways of gardening, for example, just by walking through a Home Depot and seeing all of the gardening supplies that are present. It doesn't mean that I'm necessarily going to buy something else, but it does mean that maybe I discover something new that I wouldn't have otherwise discovered had I not walked through that gardening supply store, for example.
Well, how come I don't see this behavior when we're in the grocery store? You're always very focused and annoyed when I want to meander.
Okay, so this is where you talk about the value of the items or the importance or the risk of the items that you're talking about. So there's this concept that I think most marketers probably know. It's this hunting versus grazing grocery store behavior. It's a century's worth of psychological research that tells us, why do grocery stores put the milk and the eggs in the back of the store? Well, they do it because there are many, many people who view grocery shopping as a chore. It's a thing that must be done. It is not a thing I wish to spend a lot of time doing. And so in order for the grocery store to, let's say, have opportunity to sell me more things.
Maximize.
I mean, it has to happen too, right? What they do is they design the store just so I will be confronted with opportunities to discover new things.
Okay, fair enough.
And so in that kind of a context, I already go into that grocery store knowing the items that I wish to get and then get out as soon as possible. It doesn't bring me a lot of joy. And so that's why I'm not particularly curious in grocery stores. I already know where all the things I want are.
So not to digress, how does that translate on an online experience? I mean, because the study was looking at online behavior, how we were searching for information.
Well, listen, I mean, I looked at this in a whole bunch of different ways. And I think one of my favorite ways to do this, when I start to think about big philosophical questions about how technology is changing us over the years, I usually end up looking at it over a timeline. And in this case, what I did is I looked at, let's call it like some big retail numbers. I looked at a concept called planned purchases and impulse purchases over 3 periods of time. I looked at what was it like before e-commerce, so in the 90s, traditional retail, big box kind of places. And then I looked at what happened to impulse versus planned purchases in an e-commerce era. And then I looked at what's been happening now, now that conversational AI is here. And here's what I learned. There really wasn't, let's call it, a great confident shift in the share of impulse purchases versus planned purchases between traditional retail and marketplaces like e-commerce, like Amazon and these kinds of things. But what does look to be happening with AI is there are actually more impulse purchases that are happening. And there was some logic to why. Mostly, it seems to be that we're more likely to make an impulse purchase with AI because it is so much easier to get exactly what we want whenever we want it. We don't even need to browse anything visually anymore. We can say, I want this kind of product for this kind of purpose, and I live in this place, and it can return it to us. And so it makes impulse purchases very, very, very accessible. That being said, you've got maybe a shift towards us being able to buy more impulsive items. But I think when I thought about how this would have come about, there's a behavioral scientist that I'd followed for a long time. Her name is Sheena Iyengar. And Sheena had done this grocery store study about jam. What she'd experimented on was what happens when we have a big stall in a grocery store that have a varying number of products on them. So in one study, she had about 30 jams, and in another study, she had about 6. And what she learned was when you have 30 jams on a display, you attract a great big audience, but fewer of them purchase. And when you have a smaller number of products or a smaller range of choice, fewer people visit, but more people buy. And so the reason that I explain all this is what's happened as a result of e-commerce is the diversity and breadth of product that's available to a consumer anywhere in the world is magnitudes higher than it was before e-commerce. And so consumers are now confronted with this massive array of product that actually makes it harder for us to make a decision. If we're really, really busy and we're confronted with many things, it's harder to make a choice. So shopping in a lot of ways has become harder. So to me, AI is maybe a needed innovation as a result of all of this diversity, simply to help us make a decision among far too many products.
I can see where it works because, and of course, I'm attributing this to my behavior, and maybe there are quite a few who are similar this way. It's a product. What would we have done previously to vet a product that we're buying? We'd have looked to see ingredient labels, transparency in their manufacturing of that product or the development of that product, testimonials, reviews, right? And now I don't have to go score. I don't have to go through a Reddit. I don't have to go through a TripAdvisor. I don't have to go through any of these, websites that collect reviews and do the scoring, because if I just type out my query about a particular product, say Korean skincare, everyone's sold onto it, but it works differently for different skin types and different climate conditions, etc. Am I going to go searching through a whole bunch of different websites to talk about it? Or am I just going to do a simple query? And now I have that information that's been summarized because it's scraped through all this public information. How accurate, how correct it is, it's fairly good, but I'm okay with it because that's how much value I'm placing with it. So I can see where for a product this works. But I mean, if I'm going on a trip, though, I do use AI to find certain things in terms of trip planning and optimizing and, just to sort of get an idea. But that's just it. Beyond that, I'm looking through reviews and websites and travel bloggers and history bloggers, etc., about the place I want to visit. And I need pictures and videos to get an idea. So I don't know. What do you say about that?
I mean, there's probably two topics in there. So one of them is on the do I trust AI to help me choose experiences like trips? But the other may be boring, but this was one of my initial ideas here too. Has the importance of what other people say about a product changed in terms of how we make a purchase decision? So again, I look back at that traditional retail, e-commerce, and now AI. And
I don't think it's really changed. I just think the format has probably changed, or the platform on which we access has changed. But references still, personal references and testimonials still carry great weight. But that's my opinion, right?
I mean, I don't have hard numbers for it. I just have some loosely, I'm going to say, Gemini insights that I'd learned that are not vetted. But what I got the distinct impression from when I was poking around this was that perhaps social proof, so reviews and what our peers say about a product, has mattered more in e-commerce than it has in traditional commerce. When you can't look, touch, feel, smell, weigh a product, we have fewer other senses in which to decide we trust this thing, this product that we want to buy. And so what's kind of broad strokes that makes sense to me, that as we've gone towards e-commerce, we've become more reliant on the reviews of customers and the reviews of businesses. And that's made companies like Amazon be pretty important in terms of being able to trust a purchase you're going to make online.
By the way, the references A to Z and Amazon, this is not a paid podcast or blog. We just are using them for reference or an example.
I mean, to that point, AI seems to do, in order to make these recommendations, it does look at those customer reviews on sites like Amazon or Alibaba or Shopee or any of those marketplaces. It looks at a whole bunch more beyond that. But what it seems to be doing is it's just ingesting all of this content from a variety of different sites on our behalf. And then it summarizes it for us. So it'll look at the product page, that particular product that you're looking at that could be available on Amazon. So it'll go to the Apple laptop page and it'll read the product descriptions that are there. It'll take a look at things that are said on Reddit. It'll look at what's said on LinkedIn or Facebook. It'll look at reviews of customers. Now, this can change based on the foundation model. So some of the research showed that ChatGPT versus DeepSeek versus Gemini do tend to look in different places. That being said, all it's really doing is it's automating this process that we used to do ourselves by looking at customer reviews and brand URLs and Reddit and wherever else we might go to look.
But let's just take a step back and just think about it a bit more philosophically. The journey to find information, to find answers, whether they were perfect, imperfect, incomplete, etc., meant that we also came across other interesting information. And as per this article that Dr. Le Cunff, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, she does point out is that it was that journey itself that helped us remember things, remember information in greater amounts and diverse information. Now it's a one track, right? I'm here and I get to here. I'm not doing any of this to get to here. So that opportunity to learn, to be curious, to find, to be, and the outcomes that could have come from it are now lost. And that's probably that trade-off that I'm curious about, because we have so much information, so much data that's being thrown at us. And you said there's too many choices. Our heads would explode if we had to sit and review each and every one of them. And we need these shortcuts, but at what cost? And so where can we think about where we use AI for what it's useful for, and where can we sort of bring this intentionality to it to say, like, no, I think this is where I want to pursue my path to, being curious, and my path to find the answer.
Well, I mean, all of this kind of reminds me about the how we learn math kind of debate.
Oh God, let's not talk about that.
I mean, the premise is similar. Like there is a new, faster way for us to do math. It's called a calculator versus you must use pencil and paper to do your arithmetic the long way.
So I grew up in India, so I still can do the long way, and I can also do it mentally. Dave grew up in Canada.
Cannot. I mean, can, but painfully to do math this way. It's possible, but I'm not in practice anymore. So that kind of particular skill may have atrophied. But the question that I think is maybe relevant to the curiosity coin is, so what? I can still do math quite competently. So can you. I just don't do it well manually. And so the same concept comes up here. What impact might outsourcing our comparison, let's call it mental muscles, cause if we no longer do it? And this is what the whole concept around curiosity has been about. So we might become less capable of evaluating difference in high stakes comparisons. Comparing one car to another, needing to make a choice quickly, we might not be willing or able to do that quickly on the spot. So it may mean that we lose the ability to, let's call it, make higher stakes decisions, even with more complicated product, because we become more accustomed to saying, AI, please help me pick.
I think for me personally, what really got me was that I think it's very subconscious. I don't think we actually consciously think about it. When we are looking for answers, and it's not a linear journey, it's all over the place, we come across other interesting information that we didn't know we were looking for, or would have been helpful in informing us for that final response or the final answer. With the ability to now just query a ChatGPT or equivalent product out there without any of the other information coming in, we're losing out on those opportunities for learning those interesting pieces of information that might have informed us and then probably made us change our decision or our um, oh, or might have been the fork that we went down a different rabbit hole. And I think that's I won't say sad, but it's like, oh, it's a little, oh, that's the best I can think about it.
Well, listen, like when you first came with this thought to me, my weekend thoughts about it were kind of similar to yours, that this is sad. But a few days later, after I've engaged with a few more people and done a little bit more reading, what I've kind of walked away with is maybe a different frame through which to view this. So AI, in let's call it a commercial perspective, is efficient. But efficient is boring. However, we are also time starved, many of us. We are overburdened with too much choice and are kind of putting our hands up saying, please help me make my life easier in some way, shape, or form. And so, from that lens, brilliant. I love AI. It makes it so much easier for me to buy exactly what I need when I need it. And I don't need to be advertised to. But on the flip side of this, or at least I don't need to be advertised to yet. I'm sure the AI companies will find some interesting ways to advertise to us within that chat.
This is our conspiracy theory.
But this is later. For now, I think the part that we're both saying makes us a little bit sad is, listen, shopping is fun, or at least some shopping is fun. It's been a way for us to, I don't know, just find something joyful or unexpected. And that unexpected discovery usually gives us a nice dopamine hit, which makes us feel a certain way. It can feel empowering, it can make us feel, that more things are possible. But I think this is the question for me. We know that AI is probably a great ROI tool for business. Making things easier for a customer is probably one of the first things that every business should do. There's a lot of work involved in doing that. We help businesses do that too. But it is pretty boring. It's just more money and faster for business and faster for customer, which is win-win for all, which is great. But
really boring.
Really boring. You can't all be that way. Like, we don't buy every product that we buy because we need it. We buy many products that we buy and services that we buy because we want it. And for that, we may need to design our businesses somewhat more intentionally to offer these unexpected moments of joy or discovery to customers outside the lens of AI. This already is the case for experiences. It turns out, you kind of alluding to this a little earlier on, we trust quite well, at least the early data coming from the US, that the product that the AI recommends to us is suitable for us. And that's why most of us will just pick the first thing it suggests. But it turns out we don't trust it to tell us how we should plan our African safari or our Nile River cruise.
Our Antarctica expedition, if we're being adventurous. But on that note, I think this was a fun chat. Dave and I do tend to have these kind of conversations. Some of you may think, oh my God, these guys are boring. But one of the things that we do have in common is our desire to be curious about many things. We've been talking a lot about AI and its impact in more recent past, more frequently. And so if you enjoyed this podcast, we're always happy to get some suggestions, feedback. What do you think about curiosity and the impact of AI on our curiosity, and what would mean for, if you're a business in the marketplace, what would mean for you? And also if there's any topic that you think that you'd like for us to discuss. On that note, bye-bye.